Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to finish off a macrame bracelet. Now there's a few different ways you can do this, and I'm going to show you my two favourite ways of doing it in this video. Now this is basically a sliding clasp where you use no findings, you just use whatever cord that you've used throughout and some extra beads. So you can say this will probably be the easiest way of doing it. You don't need many extra materials for this. And it's also adjustable, so obviously this is how you open it to put it on and off, but also it adjusts so different sizes can wear it, because it doesn't have to be closed this tight to wear it. So that's one I'm going to show you how to make, and the other one is where you use some cord ends to finish off your piece. Now I really like using this way as well because it makes it look really nicely finished and professional, and also you can put an extended chain on, which will then also make this adjustable to different sizes. So if you want to learn how to do this, then stay tuned. This is the first one I'm going to show you how to make, and this is basically a macrame sliding clasp, and that's how it works. You just open it and close it by pulling cords through. This is the basic way of doing it. I'm going to show you a few other variations. This is a bracelet that I made where I'm using wax cord, but then I'm also using an embroidery thread running through. And then what I've done, you could just finish it off and make the locking part out of the wax cord alone, but what I want it to do is to keep the design running all the way through so it would match. I've incorporated the embroidery thread into that as well, so it's just to show that you can use, it doesn't have to be just a single thread, you can do exactly the same that you've done throughout. So you could use two threads or cords for this part as well. And then in a different design as well, sometimes you end up with one cord, like in this, and often with a typical Shambhala bracelet, you'll end up with one cord on each end. Sometimes you can end up with two. You can cut it down if you want to just have one, but sometimes I think it's quite nice to have the two, like in this one. And it just works the exact same way, you're just working with two cords instead of one. You can go up and have more, like three, but personally I prefer having two as the maximum. As you can see, it just works the exact same way. You just make sure that you keep hold of all of them and pull them equally. That's the only thing. That's why I don't like going up more than two, because then it might start getting a bit difficult. So that's a few variations, so if you want to learn how to do this, then stay tuned. Now here I have a bracelet that I've near enough finished. I've finished the main part of it and I've just yet to do the adjustable part. So what I do is you want to get a separate piece of cord out. It doesn't have to be very long. I like for it to be the same cord that I've used throughout the actual bracelet. It doesn't have to be. That's completely up to you. It could be something else. It's just for a uniform look. I prefer that. And often what you'll find is when you're making your bracelet, you get into the end of it, you then have some ends that you then need to glue off and cut off. Often what you have left over will be enough for you to actually use to make the clasp. It happens often in my case anyway. If it is, because it doesn't need to be very long, just use that part because that means less wastage as well. If not, then just cut a separate piece off. So we have this bracelet and we have the separate piece of cord ready. So you want to fold it over and find about the middle. Just keep hold of that with your finger. And then what you want to do is with your bracelet, you want to kind of shape it into the bracelet shape. So you pull your ends against each other like this so they overlap. And then all you do is you grab hold of both of these cords. And as you can see from the top, they lay nicely side by side, going opposite directions to each other. And this is your starting position. What you can do with this, if you don't feel comfortable just holding them with your fingers, if you feel like it's a bit too fiddly, you can use some form of clip or something to keep them together to help you hold them at first. That's completely up to you. I don't tend to do that because I don't feel the need to, but you can do. So what you do then is grab your separate piece of cord, have your finger in roughly about the middle. You place that behind your two holding cords, the ones that are coming out from the bracelet, which is basically the same cord, but the ends are overlapping each other. So it kind of turns into two. And then pull the end through. So you have that separate working cord running behind your two holding cords. Now I normally then keep hold of that with my fingers, so it's not going to go anywhere. And then what you need to do now is make square knots. And this is just the same type of square knots that you would make on a Shambhala bracelet or on a lot of other macrame work. Nothing different or special to it. So you start with one side. Your two holding cords, just where they are, keep them out of the way. And then this is your working cords, the ones you just placed behind. You start with one side, it doesn't matter which side. Put that over your two holding cords, so you have a loop here. And then you grab the cord from the other side. Put that over the one coming from the opposite side. Put it through your bracelet. Now as you can see, it's just the first one here that's a little bit fiddly, because it's until you've tied everything together. But that's coming through your bracelet, and then you want to get it up through your loop. So it looks like this. So it's just basically exactly like a square knot. The only difficult part is that you're kind of holding everything in the air instead of fastened to something. So this is the first half of your first square knot. Now what you want to do is just push it up a bit if you're a bit far down. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then you want to do the other half. So you take the cord from the opposite side, start with the opposite side, put it over to form the loop. Put the other one over that, underneath, through the bracelet, and up through the loop. And pull that nice and tight. And again, go back to the other side. You now made one full square knot, and you want to make some more. And every time I like to tighten it as much as I can, really. You might be a bit worried that if you tighten it too much, you won't be able to use it. Because obviously, these cords, your holding cords, they have to move. But I rather tighten it as much as I can to make it as durable and as secure as I can. It does mean that the first time you pull it, it might be a bit difficult and seem really tight, but it's literally only for the first 1 or 2 times, and then it kind of settles in. But I prefer doing that so I know it's as secure as it can be. So you just make as many square knots as you want. I'm on my 4th one now. The amount of square knots you make is completely up to you. There's no set amount. All I say is I usually do either 6 or 8. Obviously you can do 7. It's not like it has to be an equal number. It's just I alter between 6 and 8. I like to have 6 as a minimum just because I find that if you do any less than that, it's a little bit too... it's not sturdy enough in my opinion. And then whether I do 6 or 8 kind of depends on maybe the size of the bracelet. If I feel like I've made 6 and I still want the bracelet just to be a little bit bigger, I'll go up and then make 8. or if I feel like it needs to be a little bit more sturdy. So I've now reached 6. I'm going to continue to make 8 for this one. Seven. And last one. And as you can see, my ends are really short now, but you just need to have enough to work with, really. So I've now reached 8 square knots. So you've now reached the amount of knots that you want for the locking part, and obviously you want to get rid of these ends now. You just do that in exactly the same way as you would do in the actual bracelet. So for that, I'm going to get out my glue. I'm using some hypo cement in this case. The reason for this is it's a really good glue in general, like really strong, and it has a nice consistency, and then also it dries clear, which is obviously a very big plus, so it's as unnoticeable as possible, really. Because you don't really want that to be too obvious that you glued it and all that. And then also it has this really fine nozzle tip to it, so that really helps with really nice detail work. So what you do is, when you make your square knots, what you'll find is you get like a little well. It creates a little well where you make your knot, and that you want to fill that up, and then also go around your loose ends, really. The only thing I'll say is the difference between, because that's how you would finish off the macrame bracelet up here as well. The difference is you want to be a bit careful when you fill up the well. You don't want the glue to run down and touch these holding cords, because they need to be able to move as you pull them. So obviously if they're glued, that might be a bit difficult. So just be a bit careful where you place your glue. I just like to go around the ends, loose ends, and then kind of on top of the cord, on top of the knot. A little bit down the well, but being careful not to get your holding cords. Then go to the other side as well. Turn it over, and I do the back as well, because you want to make sure it's secure and that it's going to last and not come undone at any point. So you don't want to like drown it in glue. Be gentle with the glue, because you don't want it to go all over the place, but just spread it out nicely, like so. And then obviously what you need to do is leave that to dry. So I've now let the glue dry, and I've cut off the ends, and it's near enough done. This is actual locking part, and that's finished now. As you can see, the first time I just moved it then, it was pretty tight, but then from now on you can do it quite easily. It's just the first 1 or 2 times. So reach that point now. Obviously the one thing left to do now, if you don't somehow finish off these ends, you're going to be able to just pull them straight through this knotted part, and obviously we want to avoid that, because that will ruin the whole point. So I like to pull it all tight so it sits how you would have it closed, because then you know that these are equal. And then what you need to do is put something on the ends that will basically stop them going through the knots. Now what I do is I use beads for that. You can either choose to use the same ones that you've used in your bracelet, so obviously it will match, or you can find some more neutral ones that you can use for anything. Quite often I like to use what's called stardust beads in silver, because they pretty much go with anything. I can show you in one of these actually. They look like this. Because first of all, it'll save your beads so you can use more for something else if you're a bit precious about them. But also they just kind of go with everything really. But it's completely up to you. Or just use the same beads that you used in your bracelet, because obviously then you know it will match. So first thing you do is take one cord on one side first, and you want to just tie a regular knot on this. Just a simple regular knot. And you can measure these lengths if you want to, but I don't tend to, I just do it by eye. And you just tighten that knot and get it real nice and tight. And then you go to the other side, do the same thing. Tighten the knot. And again, you can measure it if you want to, but what I like to do is just hold them both out and then do it by eye. And I can see if they're pretty much equal. I'm quite happy with that, and then I just tighten it. Like so. So you now have a knot on each one. You can obviously leave it at that and just have the knots as the stoppers, but for decoration I quite like to have beads. So what I do now is I get my bead. In this case I'm using the same ones that I used in the bracelet, and you just feed one on to one side, push it all the way down to the knot. You then grab that again and you make another knot, same one you did before, this time above the bead. So you're basically going to cage in the bead with a knot on each side, and make sure that when you're tightening this knot you have it as close to the bead as you can, like so. And I like to tie an extra knot on the outside, so I do it one more time, same kind of knot, and I make sure this knot basically goes on top of the other knot, so they form one larger knot really. Because in some cases this will obviously be, you'll be holding these when you open and close it and stuff, and you don't want to have the risk at you're not actually being able to pull through the bead, because the hole might actually be big enough to eventually that'll happen. So if you do two knots, that is most definitely pretty much not going to happen unless the holes are really large. But then obviously you can make even more knots if you want to. Do the same thing on the other side. Put your bead on. Create another regular knot. Make sure your bead is down on top of the knot that we made before, and then you just tighten this as close as you can get it. And do another one. Right on top of that knot. Like so. Now that's definitely not going to go anywhere, and it's not going to pull through the bead or anything. And then what I like to do, just for the last finishing touch, is I get my glue out again, because I just want to secure all these knots in place. I don't want to risk them coming undone or anything at any point, because obviously these will be under a lot of stress with taking them on and off, so make them as secure as possible. So all I do is just get my glue and just go over my knot really. Make sure to get some glue into any crevices you can find and all that. Again, don't drown it in glue, but just a nice thin layer. Cover all of it really. And I just put a little bit on the bottom one as well. So there's no harm in doing that. So the same thing on the other side. Like so. And just a little bit on the bottom one. There. And then put glue away. And then obviously you want to leave that to dry. And then when it's dry, you just get your scissor and get as close to the knot as you can to cut off the excess cord that you can then put away. Do that on both sides. Like so. And there you have the finished bracelet and the finished locking part. And that's how simple it is. And you can open and close it. Like so. Now the other way I want to show you how to finish off a macrame bracelet is this. And that's using some actual cord endings. Now I really like this method as well because it gives a really nice and professional looking finish to it, I think. And again, you can add an extended chain to make it adjustable. So if you want to learn how to do that, then stay tuned. Now for this you'll need a couple of different things. You'll need your actual cord ends, and they look like this. It's almost like, if you look at them from the bottom, it's like a U shape, and then they have a loop at the top. And then you'll need some form of clasp. I like to use the lobster claw clasp. You can use any other form that you like. An extended chain as well, and then a couple of jump rings. So get that together and I'll show you how to do it. So I have a bracelet here that I need to finish off. This is just, again, a simple Shambhala style bracelet. Both ends are free and I need to attach my clasp. Now on this end you'll notice I haven't actually finished off my excess cord, my endings. You can do if you want to, but I actually like to use them to put them inside the cord ends. I just feel like it gives it a little bit extra security. Obviously there isn't any on the other side, but it doesn't really matter. You can cut them off if you want to. So what you need to do is get out one of your cord ends. So you'll do one end at a time, and then you don't necessarily have to use glue for this. I think a lot of people don't. I'm sure it will probably hold without, but I like to just give that extra security. So what I do is I get a bit of glue. For this I like to use some E6000. It's just some really nice glue. It's really strong and it dries clear in case anything gets out a little bit and you can see it. And it's got a good consistency. You can use other kinds if you have that. And then I just use a toothpick to just get a bit of that glue inside the cord end. Not too much because you don't want glue spilling out all over the place really, but just a little bit. So what I do, what you need to decide is what do you want to be your front and back of your bracelet. In some cases it doesn't really matter. In this case it actually doesn't really matter because they're exactly the same on both sides. So what I do is I grab all my cords and then I want to place these cords inside the cord end. And that's another reason why having the glue there really helps, because it helps and keeps the cord in place when you've done that. This is the most fiddly bit about it. So it's just really getting your cords in there. Obviously there's limited space, you can't maybe put 5 cords, or if you're using 2mm cord or something it might be a bit tricky, but then you would just cut off the ends and just have one cord and then it would fit. So I've now placed my cords inside the cord end and the glue is helping keeping them in place even though I'm not even holding it. So that's another reason I like doing it. And you want to make sure it's pushed as far down as you can so it starts right where your knotting or your bracelet ends. So as smooth a transition as you can make it. So you now have your cords inside the cord end. And what you'll find now is you have almost like a wall on each side. Now that wall you need to press down. And what you do is you get out your pliers, just some flat nose pliers, and then you want to do one side at a time, place it inside your flat nose pliers and just press down one side at a time and turn it around. Go to the other side, make sure your cords stay in there. and just do it gently. And just press it down and go over it a couple of times if you need to. So you squeeze both sides down, and now it's basically turned into a flat piece, and you have the loop on one side, and you just want to squeeze it really nice and tight. Make sure that they're closed nice and tight, like so. And then what you need to do is get a scissor out, because you now need to cut off the excess cord. And all you do is get your scissor. I like just folding my cords back a little bit because you want to avoid this loop. You don't want to cut that. Obviously don't risk cutting it off, but also you don't want to damage your scissors if you can help it. Just get as close as you can and just cut them off, like so. And there you have your cord end attached. And then you obviously do the same thing on the other end. And then I'll show you how to finish it off. So I've now attached my cord end in both ends. And what's left to do now is you want to get some jump rings out, and you want to open them up. Again, I just use my flat nose pliers. Need 2 for this to open it. So you open that, put it through the loop in your cord end, like so, and then just on one end you attach your clasp, and on the other end you attach your extender chain. Doesn't matter what you do where. And then just close the jump ring back up. Like so. And then in the other end, you get your other jump ring out. You want to open that up as well. And then put that through the loop in your cord end, and then put the opposite thing on. In my case, that's the clasp. And then close it back up. Now the way that I like to close my jump rings is get a good grip and then just gently ease it. Like twist it back and forth a little bit, not like loads, but just gently, because you want to make sure that you can join it up as tight as you can, really, so it doesn't come undone. You can also solder them if you want to. And there, now that's attached. So I have both ends done, so I can now open my clasp and attach it together, and there's my finished bracelet. So that's how simple that is. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching.